Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the opening ceremony of the ASEAN-Korea Trade and Investment Roundtable 2023. This program is co-organized by the ASEAN-Korea Center and the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, and we are streaming live from Seoul, Korea. My name is Ja Young-sun from the Trade and Investment Unit of the ASEAN-Korea Center, and it is my great pleasure to be your Master of Ceremonies for the day. This year marks our third roundtable, during which we will discuss the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy. We express our sincere appreciation to the guests of honor, presenters, panelists, and all the online and offline participants joining in from ASEAN and Korea. For simultaneous interpretation for our offline participants, please note that channel 1 of your receiver is Korean, while channel 2 is English. Now, let us begin the ceremony by inviting His Excellency Kim Hae-yong, Secretary General of the ASEAN-Korea Center, for the opening remarks. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Institute for International Economic Policy, and His Excellency Gandhi Srisyanto Sueruman, Ambassador of Republic of Indonesia and Chair of ASEAN Committee in Seoul, and His Excellency Songgan Ruangmunitan, Ambassador of Laos PDR, and His Excellency Sapinder Singh, Deputy Secretary General for the ASEAN Economic Community of ASEAN Secretariat. Distinguished guests and speakers from ASEAN and Korea, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome everyone to ASEAN-Korea Trade Investment Roundtable 2023. First, I'd like to appreciate continued dedication and unwavering support from our co-organizer, KIEP, Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, and the cooperating organization, ASEAN Secretariat. This year marks our third roundtable to discuss collective efforts of ASEAN and Korea in shaping economic and trade outlook. And today's discussion will be focusing on Indo-Pacific strategies of ASEAN and Korea under the theme of ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy. This roundtable aims to offer insights and potential cooperation opportunities to business people and stakeholders of ASEAN and Korea. Distinguished guests, the world has been experiencing a time of unprecedented health crisis and economic emergency. It comes as the spread of COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, rising prices, inflationary pressure, and high interest rates weigh on global supply chain resilience and economic recovery efforts. In the face of global economic uncertainty, no country can tackle global challenges alone, and it becomes imperative to achieve the regional strategic partnership. To start from where we belong, here comes the Indo-Pacific, a home to 65% of the world population, including ASEAN and Korea. It is a rapidly growing region, accounting for 62% of world's GDP and 46% of international trade. So the region is of utmost significance, not only economically, but also strategically to ASEAN and Korea. ASEAN and Korea reflect their engagement in the region by introducing ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific and Korea-ASEAN Solidarity Initiative. In the course of building shared prosperity and peace in the region, leaders from ASEAN and Korea reaffirm ASEAN-Korea cooperation at the ASEAN-Korea Summit in Phnom Penh, Cambodia in November last year. Being said, today's roundtable intends to probe into details of ASEAN's perspective and Korea's strategy on Indo-Pacific to seek their linkages, particularly around economic cooperation. We will uncover the priority sectors that ASEAN and Korea have in common through the keynote speech and roundtable discussion sessions about digital trade, climate change, and supply chain. Identifying the key sectors will be the very first step in building momentum in pursuing mutual prosperity and strengthening our partnership between ASEAN and Korea. In this regard, I truly believe today's roundtable is very timely and meaningful. Lastly, there is no doubt we are navigating another rough time in the post-pandemic era, but we should keep in mind challenges could also be an opportunity in disguise. It is time we, ASEAN and Korea, rightfully address and wisely respond to this demanding period together. I hope today's discussion will bring a tangible outcome for all of us. I thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Now, please welcome Dr. Kim Hung-jong, President of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, for his welcome remarks. Please give him a big hand.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kim Hung-jong, Director, the President of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. His Excellency Kim Hae-yong, and also His Excellency Candice Celestianto Suerman, and also His Excellency the Laos Ambassador, and all the ladies and gentlemen who are joining us online and offline. On behalf of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, I'm honored, and I'd like to extend my warm welcome to all the ladies and gentlemen who are joining the ASEAN Korea Trade and Investment Roundtable 2023. After the pandemic, that we are still going through the uncertainty and a complex crisis. And then we are seeing, we're actually standing in the middle of the complex crisis. As you are all aware now that technological hegemony competition is going on, and the decline of the multilateral trading system is restructuring our fragmented supply chain, and the shock of supply chain is expanded to many areas. The health and digital divide, the climate change crisis are threatening the stability and prosperity of the world. In the process of reorganizing the supply chains, economic security and high-tech cooperation are becoming more and more important. However, in the current fragmented international cooperation, the strategic importance of Indo-Pacific region is higher than ever. This concept of Indo-Pacific region has become in the center of attention. We have researched that the Indo-Pacific related region strategies, and that we realized that there are 13 countries, including the US, France, the Netherlands, the UK, and Korea. EU and ASEAN countries, the committee, have talked about Indo-Pacific strategies, and among them, in November last year, the Korean government announced the strategy for free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region, which was announced by the President of the Korea. What is important here is that the two leaders of one country and the region have come across on the same note, that they have showed a firm will to focus on the importance of Indo-Pacific strategy. In terms of Indo-Pacific strategy, and also in the region, that Korea has announced the importance And not only Korea, but also from the ASEAN's point, Indo-Pacific Strategy, which is AOIP, was released. In terms of sustainability and also in marine cooperation, there are many areas that the two country and region would like to cooperate together. So in the strategy, the ASEAN has become so clear in geopolitically and also economically. The region is located in the focal point, which is ASEAN. So in this era of Indo-Pacific era, so I cannot emphasize more about ASEAN. Korea and ASEAN are now seeing the similar challenges, but in overcoming the similar challenges, I think it's critical for us to work closely together. Since the establishment of Dialogue Partnership in 1989, Korea and ASEAN have continued to expand cooperative relations in a wide range of areas, starting with the entry into force of the Goods Agreement with ASEAN in 2007, RCEP and FTAs and multiple agreements have been made. This has made ASEAN the second largest trading destination for Korea and Korea the fifth largest trading destination for ASEAN. We are facing multiple challenges and to tackle the issue such as supply chain issues, climate change, and digital sector. Our cooperation is more than important. For sustainable economic prosperity, we must strengthen the resilience of the global supply chain. And also we have to strive for a low carbon transition to respond to the climate changes. Ladies and gentlemen, today's seminar is the third event co-hosted by the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy and the ASEAN-Korea Center. In the first, in 2021, we discussed ways to expand trade and investment. And in the second event, which was last year, we discussed ways to evaluate cooperation with RCEP. And today in this event, we are here to talk about the Indo-Pacific Strategy and AOIP, especially in the area of climate change, supply chain, and digital trade. I think the seminar is very significant and timely. Today, I believe that your presentation and discussion of participating experts will serve as a valuable foundation for the common development of Korea-ASEAN. I'd like to once again recognize the hard work of His Excellency Kim Hung-jong and the representative from Korea and ASEAN. And I also would like to thank all the ladies and gentlemen who are joining us online and offline, and also Indonesian ambassador. Thank you for your keynote speech. So moving forward, our policy our institute will do our best to contribute to the better relationship between Korea and ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, for your remarks. Last but not least, allow me to invite His Excellency Gandhi Sulistianto Suherman, Ambassador of Indonesia to the Republic of Korea and the Chair of the ASEAN Committee in Seoul, for his congratulatory remarks. Let's welcome His Excellency with a warm round of applause.
안녕하십니까. 제르먼 간디 술리스티안토입니다. 저는 인도네시아 대사입니다. Thank you very much for the time and opportunity for me to give a speech today. Secretary General ASEAN-Korean Center, His Excellency Ambassador Kim Hae-young, President of Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, Honorable Dr. Kim Hyung-jong, Deputy Secretary General for ASEAN Economic Community and ASEAN Secretariat, Honorable Satvinder Singh, my colleague, Ambassador Laos PDR, Mr. Song Kane, honorable speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to extend my warmest congratulations to all of you, particularly to the ASEAN-Korean Center and KIEPS for successfully organizing this important event. I believe the topic today discussion is very important and timely to discuss Indo-Pacific as one of the most dynamic regions in the world. ASEAN and South Korea are important players in this region to create cooperation, peace, and prosperity. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia assumes ASEAN chairmanship this year under the theme of ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. This theme partly reflects both internal and external challenges faced by ASEAN. Indonesia came up with 3 pillars of ASEAN chairmanship. Number 1, ASEAN Matters. Number 2, Epicentrum of Growth. And number 3, implementation of ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific IOIP. On the pillar of ASEAN Matters, Indonesia wants to strengthen ASEAN unity, ASEAN centrality, and ASEAN capacity to address current and future challenges. That is why we have Vision 2045. ASEAN should be more responsive and adaptive in facing future challenges. On the epicentrum of growth, Indonesia wants to solidify regional mechanisms. In dealing with external economic shocks, ASEAN must become a peaceful region and anchor for global stability and prosperity, not a proxy of any major power in the world. And on the implementation of our IP pillars, Indonesia aims to build an inclusive regional architecture to have concrete cooperation in 4 priority areas, which are maritime cooperation, connectivity, UN Sustainable Development Goals 2030, economic and other possible areas of cooperation. With the implementation of ROIP and its 4 concrete cooperation, I believe ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific ROIP and Korea Indo-Pacific Strategy announced last year could synergize. Several areas can be explored, such as infrastructure and connectivity, climate change, as well as maritime cooperation. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as a chairs of ASEAN this year, Indonesia will organize the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Infrastructure Forum, or IEPIF, in Jakarta, precisely on 6 to 7 September 2023, with the theme of propelling the next wave of sustainable infrastructures. This event will be organized under 3 sub-themes: green infrastructure and resilient supply chains, inclusive digital transformation and creative economy, including animation and games, sustainable and innovative financing. Indonesia views ASEAN Indo-Pacific Infrastructure Forum as a flagship event that brings multiple opportunities. This event shows Indonesia's commitment to creating ASEAN as epicentrum of growth, implementing of IOIP, and contributing to the achievement of MPAC 2025 and the ASEAN community after 2025. We hope that ASEAN member states, its external partner, can utilize the IIPIF to unlock ASEAN potential through infrastructure and supply chain developments, innovation and human capital development, and help achieve the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am confident that today's event will provide an excellent platform for all of us to exchange views, share best practice, explore opportunities for cooperation between ASEAN and Korea in the Indo-Pacific region. Through such constructive dialogue and partnership, we can achieve our common goal of building a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. In closing, let us continue to work together to strengthen ASEAN-Korea cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region to benefit our people and the world. Thank you very much. Terima kasih. 감사합니다.
Thank you.
네, 감사합니다, 대사님.
Today's roundtable will consist of 3 parts: a keynote session, roundtable discussion, and Q&A. There will be 2 keynote speeches followed by the discussion among 4 panelists. Then we will wrap up with a final Q&A. The discussion will be centered on 3 priority sectors included in both the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific and Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy. If you have any questions in relation to the presentations or discussion round, please use the YouTube live chat function to share them with us. We will now move on to the keynote session. The first presentation will represent ASEAN, while the second will cover the Republic of Korea. Our first keynote speaker is His Excellency Satvinder Singh, Deputy Secretary General for the ASEAN Economic Community of the ASEAN Secretariat. His speech will be delivered in a pre-recorded format.
His Excellency Kim Hae-young, the Secretary General of the ASEAN-Korean Center, Dr. Kim Hwee-chong, the President of the Korean Institute for International Economic Policy, His Excellency Gandhi Sulistianto Soherman, the Ambassador of Indonesia, as well as the Chair of ASEAN countries in Seoul, distinguished speakers, panelists, participants, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings from the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta. First of all, let me congratulate and appreciate the ASEAN-Korea Center and the Korean Institute for International Economic Policy for organizing this roundtable. For me, the roundtable, it's important. It allows us to share and to brainstorm in the next phase of our enhancements that we are seeking for the ASEAN-Korea economic relations. Following up, of course, from the recent announcement by President Yoon of Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy during the ASEAN Republic of Korea summit that took place in November last year, as well as following from the ASEAN leaders' adoption of their declaration on the mainstreaming of the 4 priority areas for the ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific during the same summit that took place again in November last year. As all of you know, the ASEAN Outlook for Indo-Pacific, it's a very important guide for ASEAN's engagement in the wider Asia-Pacific region. In short, we call it the AOIP. It truly encapsulates ASEAN's central position in promoting cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region based on the principles of openness, the principles of transparency, and the principles of inclusiveness, thereby reaffirming ASEAN's determination to contribute to peace, to freedom, and also contributing to prosperity in our region. ASEAN welcomes and we actually encourage all of our partners, including the Republic of Korea, to support and to undertake substantive, practical, and tangible cooperation with ASEAN, including especially in the area of economic cooperation, which we all know is one of the key 4 priority areas under the AOIP. Now, in this context, the recently announced Korea Indo-Pacific strategy, it again attests to Korea's renewed commitment to ASEAN and of your strong support to ASEAN's centrality, which I'm sure all of the member states, including the Secretariat, we very much appreciate it. Korea truly contributes as a very important trade and investment partner of ASEAN. Korea is ASEAN's 5th largest trading partner, with latest two-way trade numbers. They have actually are reaching almost close to about 200 billion in 2021. Korea is also one of the largest sources of foreign direct investments in ASEAN. In 2021, the FDI that was contributed by Korea in ASEAN amounted to $7.1 billion US dollars. There are definitely many opportunities to further improve trade and investment relations between ASEAN and Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic that hit the world, ASEAN has been gradually transiting from the reopening of our economies, and we are moving towards the recovery and the resilience phases. And through these developments, our region again has been experiencing very strong economic recovery through our expansion. In fact, back in 2021, we reversed the negative trend and grew by 3.4% in our GDP for the region. And last year, in 2022, GDP grew healthily at 5.7%. And this year is estimated that it will again continue to grow between 4.7 to above 5%. Of course, nevertheless, we are aware that our regional economic recovery and our resilience still remains vulnerable given the adverse global developments, including the ongoing geopolitical tensions, the continued risks to global and food energy security, as well as the rising global inflationary pressures and some of the financial instabilities that we are seeing in the West. Now, against such rapidly changing global developments, naturally continued vigilance is going to be crucial. While many of the economies around the world are turning to protectionist and inward-looking policies in response to the crisis that we see today, ASEAN, on the other hand, we have remained and we have maintained our unwavering commitment to regional economic integration, and we are upholding the principles of an open, transparent, and rule-based trading system. In addition to advancing our work on supply chain resilience as a critical element for ASEAN's economic recovery, we in ASEAN are also stepping up deep efforts in the areas of digitalization and sustainability. And we clearly see these two areas as key drivers of the region's development in the many years to come. In terms of enhancing supply chain resilience, and among the numerous initiatives that ASEAN have been undertaking in terms of trade liberalization and facilitation, instrumental efforts have been made, especially in ensuring there's a seamless flow of essential goods in our region. There was an MOU on understanding on the implementation of non-tariff measures on essential goods that first started in 2020 and is going to be continuing until 2024. This was to ensure there was a continuity of supply chains during pandemic in our regions. We are also progressing in upgrading currently our ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, most important FTA for the ASEAN, in order to ensure that this FTA remains relevant, modern, forward-looking, and responsive to regional and global developments. For a similar purpose, in our external economic relations, we all can see that ASEAN have joined Korea in the full implementation of the Regional Comprehensive Partnership Agreement, which has been ASEAN-led from the beginning. Many of the other FTAs between ASEAN and dialogue partners, including Korea, are also in the pipeline for upgrade and review. I think as we are negotiating some of these upgrades, where we would like to see is innovation that comes in supporting our region-to-region strengthening of global supply chains. And I think this is an area where many of the Korean conglomerates who are looking to diversify from their current operations in Asia, in North Asia, this is where ASEAN as a region is ready to support you in the reorganization of your global supply chain in order to fulfill not only the need in order to diversification, but also to help you fulfill the need for you to have a low carbon footprint for your global supply chains. Next, regarding digitalization, the Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap has been adopted by ASEAN Economic Community in 2021. And I want you to all look for this Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap. In short, we call it the BSBR Roadmap. Now, this is a comprehensive roadmap that provides a list of priority areas, priority agenda for ASEAN's digital transformation and for its acceleration. In fact, good progress has been made in implementation of the BSBR, especially in the areas of paperless trade, in the establishment of digital payments between member states, in the areas of consumer protection, as well as strengthening e-commerce. There is also work being done today on the ground in the area of setting up of a possibility of digital identities in ASEAN, as well as work is being undertaken in order to build the capacities of our member states in order to be able to adopt the UN UNISTRAL model laws so that we all can move in tandem with the rest of the world in digital trade. But what is even more exciting is how fundamentally the region is coming together on ongoing work on a study that's been undertaken this year by ASEAN on an ASEAN Digital Economic Framework Agreement. This is a study that will be completed this year and will be providing guidance with a view of being able to help in the commencement of the negotiations of a DEFA agreement involving the 10 ASEAN member states. Again, it will be a crucial step for ASEAN to become a leading digital community and economic bloc. I think fundamentally this is going to put ASEAN on a global map. I don't think there's any region in the world that has a digital agreement in place today. Next, in terms of sustainability, ASEAN is currently implementing the framework for circular economy for the ASEAN economic community, and that will be contributing towards a sustainable development in the region, as well as helping in achieving ASEAN member states' commitments towards the Paris Agreement. A further step taking place this year is the fact that ASEAN is currently working on an ASEAN strategy on carbon neutrality. Now, this strategy on carbon neutrality is going to provide a systematic, as well as an orderly and inclusive pathway for ASEAN to become carbon neutral in the years to come. It's going to work on strategies, no regret moves on the region in order to establish itself as a compelling region that's working together in order to contribute towards a low carbon future to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the above mentioned three key priorities of ASEAN, these three key priorities, which include supply chain, digitalization, and sustainability, all of them are aligned very well with the three prioritized areas of economic cooperation between ASEAN and Korea, as proposed by Minister An Duk-kwan during the 19th consultation with the ASEAN economic ministers, which took place in September last year. It's really encouraging to see how these three areas are also reflected as the key topics at this roundtable today. I believe that the strengthening of the ASEAN-Korea cooperation in these three areas is of utmost importance, and it shall contribute to the mutual benefits of our people and our business communities. I therefore encourage all of you to maximize the opportunity by engaging in this productive exchange of views, looking into practical and mutually beneficial cooperation areas and engagements between our regions, particularly in these three areas. Again, all with the idea of facilitating stronger trade and investment linkages, and also deepening our business-to-business ties. I wish all of you a very successful roundtable with very fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the insightful speech. We will now welcome the second speaker, Dr. Kwak Sung-il, Director of the Economic and Security Department at the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. Dr. Kwak, please come up to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 저는 좀 한국의
Today I'm going to talk about Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy in relation to AOIP. So today I will briefly introduce Korea's strategy and the sub-regional strategy, which is KASD, and I will also examine the implications of the ASEAN's perspective on the Indo-Pacific and the interface between AOIP and that strategy. And I want to also talk about the strategies and initiatives that can coexist, as well as the direction and means of cooperation. So Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy began when Korea announced at the Korea-U.S. summit in May 2022, and I remember that U.S. welcomed it greatly at the time. And also during the meeting that took place in Phnom Penh, Cambodia in the November, we also announced our principles. And Korea has already been recognized as a developed country, and there is a need to create a space for diplomatic activities corresponding to it. So, in the past, Korea tended to limit our activities to Northeast Asia, but now we are expanding to the Indo-Pacific region. Let's look at the value of the Indo-Pacific region. So it's for the peace and stability, and it is very important to Korea as an open trading nation. 65% of the world's population live in this region, and it accounts for 62% of global GDP and 40% of global trade and 50% of the marine trade volume. And Korea has been economically dependent on the strategically important region here. So 78% of Korea's exports, 67% of its imports, and 70% of its trade volume are directed to this region, and 66% of foreign direct investment. Korea is not alone in announcing this strategy. The US, Europe, Japan, India, Australia, and ASEAN are also presenting the strategy. So we have three visions: freedom, peace, and prosperity. And three principles for cooperation are tolerance, trust, and reciprocity. So what we mean by tolerance is not to exclude any country. And we also build a trustworthy partnership and pursue mutually beneficial cooperation. And we have 6 regional categories: North Pacific, Southeast Asia, ASEAN, South Asia, Oceania, Eastern Africa, and Indian Ocean, and Europe and South America. And it is worth noting that China was explicitly included in the North Pacific region and made it clear that it was a target of cooperation. And Korea has 9 key areas of efforts. So for freedom, we have 2 principles, and we have peace, prosperity, and common. So we have, as you can see, regional cooperation and domain, and these are really broad ideas, but they are targeting the prosperity, for example. So let's look at the 3 strategic implications. First, we want to show that Korea's willingness to pursue a comprehensive regional strategies for this region. And secondly, we want to show that we will try to pursue the universal value for this region. So we clearly show the vision for the global order. So this is the main idea of the strategy, as well as it shows the strategic direction of Korea for this. And thirdly, we highlight the value of ASEAN. So when we talk about this region, we put the ASEAN as on the second order. And then Korea and ASEAN's connection was actually announced earlier than other visions. So we can say that ASEAN has become the center of our vision when it comes to this cooperation. And in addition, the ASEAN region is recognized as a comprehensive strategic cooperation partner to strengthen cooperation in security and strategic areas, not simply as a partner for economic cooperation. So you can see the strategy for a free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region, and you can see what areas will be the focus of Korea. So the principle of KASI are tolerance, trust, and reciprocity, and it is a firm support for mutually beneficial and sustainable cooperation between Korea and ASEAN, and promotion of a comprehensive cooperation between Korea and ASEAN, covering many different topics, including politics, economic, society, and culture. So it shows the importance of ASEAN and Korea's willingness to for the promotion of the mutually beneficial direction. So it is the promotion of a rule-based international order corresponding to freedom and peace, and it also highlights diplomacy and defense. And secondly, I want to talk about prosperity. So it is highlighting the common prosperity and development. And just like Secretary General said, supply chain stabilization, energy and digital industries and electric vehicle industries are important, as well as the upgrade of the ASEAN-Korea EIA. The third point is peace and prosperity, which is summarized as a joint response to regional and international challenges. So it aims to support ASEAN's carbon neutrality, green growth, strengthening environmental cooperation, and the 5 PECONG countries, and etc. in water resources, agriculture, and fisheries. So this talk about not only like institutional part but also the financial part. So for the next 5 years, we can see that the ASEAN related cooperation fund will be expanded greatly. And also in 2024, when we will mark the 35th anniversary of the establishment of Korea-ASEAN Dialogue Partnership, the comprehensive strategic partnership will be upgraded. So we will expand the partnership between ASEAN and Korea. So from this sense, we can say that this announcement was really meaningful. As mentioned earlier, KASI, a sub-regional strategy of Korea's Indo-Pacific region, strongly supports ASEAN's AOIP. So let's look at the 3 implications of AOIP. So they are complementary to each other. First, AOIP is ASEAN's response to the Indo-Pacific initiatives of major countries in and outside this region, including the US, India, and Japan. So the fact that the CAOIP takes ASEAN centrality as a fundamental principle for promoting this cooperation, we can say that KASI also shares the common values. Secondly, through AOP, we presented the perspectives of the existing views regarding this region. So we are highlighting the connection and then the network between the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean regions. So we have ASEAN Connectivity Master Plan, which is MPAC 2025. So we can also connect this together with the Connectivity Initiative. And thirdly, this is an effort to recover the multilateralism. So we highlight the EAS, ARE, ADMM Plus, and other ASEAN-based mechanisms. So this can be a starting point to build the Indo-Pacific architecture based on ASEAN pursuing multilateralism. So we well recognize the importance of the recognition of the changes in the security system, as well as the building of the narrative specification within the ASEAN region. So we can also see the principle. So it shows that inclusiveness is really important. So this is a platform for the communication and also the transparency and then the order-based and the rule-based order international law are important. So they correspond to Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy. And for the diplomatic decisions, diversification, and AOIP are also sharing the joint value together with Korea's Indo-Pacific strategies. So, and then in terms of the targets of cooperation, not only the four strong countries, the sub-regional cooperation is important. So I believe that there are some roles that should be played by Korea. Especially for the Mekong cooperation and maritime cooperation, there are roles to be played by Korea. This is slide 11. So based on this discussion, I want to show you the cooperation directions between AOIP and CASI. So supply chain related cooperation and digital trade expansion and climate change response are written as you can see here. So we will diversify supply chain of the items that are highly dependent on specific countries, and we also need to reinforce supply chain stability using digital technology. And we see changes in GVC and GSC strategy, and we should see this as an opportunity. And also, we need to prepare for intensified competition within Indo-Pacific region due to the reorganization of supply chain focusing on their own nation. The second point is digital trade. So digital infrastructure expansion is necessary to promote this digital trade. So we need a participation from both Korea and ASEAN region. And in the case of Korea, we have strong infrastructure for e-government, for example, so we can cooperate on this. And we are also strong in nurturing digital trade related personnel. So we can also share this. And we can also promote digital trade cooperation through bilateral FTA and RCEP. For the climate change response, we can establish cooperative systems with the related ministries and organizations. We have bilateral cooperation channels between Korea and ASEAN, but I believe that we don't have a comprehensive channel to cover every region. So we need to build it, and we can also promote cooperation for renewable energy, nuclear power, carbon capture strategy, and carbon capture utilization. And also linking bilateral and multilateral cooperation projects with ASEAN will be important. And for the development, ODA will also be important. So this is a cooperation measures between AOIP and CASI. So I have briefly written the key points on the slide. And when it comes to cooperation between ASEAN and Korea, non-binding and senior level cooperation or cooperative measure is necessary for digital trade or climate change. So we need a non-binding dialogue channel so that we can be more open and more frank to exchange our ideas and opinions between Korea and ASEAN. And under there, we can build multilateralism-based dialogue channels as well. And for companies, especially in Korea, we are highlighting the capabilities, especially the technologies. So, and we are also highlighting the stabilization of the supply chain. So I believe that we see that the scope of parts that can be supplied by ASEAN is still limited. So I want to suggest to strengthen supply chain stability by establishing innovation centers in ASEAN region. This is the last sentence that I want to share with you. Individually, we are one drop. Together, we are one ocean. So we are working together with the respective country of ASEAN, but if we do so, we will be just a single drop. But we want to be together. We want to work together. By doing so, I'm sure that we will be able to respond to the challenges in this very unstabilized era, and we want to be meaningful partnership. We want to be meaningful partners to each other. So thank you very much for your attention.
Again, thank you to His Excellency Satvinder Singh and Dr. Kwak Sung-il for their presentations. This marks an end to our keynote session. Before we proceed, we will have a 15-minute break. I would like to request our offline participants to kindly fill out the survey placed before you. You may leave the completed survey form on your table before you leave. The coffee break will begin at 3 p.m.
ASEAN, a key partner of Korea. With its strategic location and a rapidly growing economy, ASEAN today has become one of the most sought-after partners in the world. Based on a strong foundation of friendly relations, ASEAN and Korea have developed close partnerships in the economic, social, and cultural sectors. Now, the two regions are working together to build a community of peace and prosperity centered on its peoples. The ASEAN-Korea Center was established back in 2009 with a vision to build a lasting and genuine partnership between ASEAN and Korea. The center contributes to promoting shared prosperity between ASEAN and Korea by expanding trade and investment by facilitating cooperation in future industries. We aim to strengthen sustainable and future-oriented cooperation in culture and tourism, and promote mutual understanding and respect by expanding two-way cultural exchanges between ASEAN and Korea. The center is also laying the foundations for the establishment of the future community of ASEAN and Korea by raising public awareness on the importance of ASEAN-Korea partnership and facilitating exchanges among the youth and professionals of the two regions. Based on trust and mutually beneficial partnership, ASEAN-Korea relations have made remarkable progress over the past 30 years. And by connecting the peoples and sharing prosperity, the ASEAN-Korea Center will make every effort to build a more peaceful and prosperous community of ASEAN and Korea.
If I may, I can encapsulate what the ASEAN-Korea Center is doing in one word. It's connecting. We connect people, we connect companies, and we connect countries between ASEAN and Korea in trade and investment, culture and tourism, and people-to-people exchanges. As ASEAN and Korea march together toward the future, the center will continue to strengthen our partnership in a more sustainable, future-oriented, and mutually beneficial way.
Hello again. Before we begin the roundtable discussion, I would like to remind the audience that a live Q&A session will take place afterwards. If there are any questions from the representatives of the ASEAN embassies that are present today, please feel free to share them with one of our AKC staff. For our online viewers, please ask your question through the YouTube live chat function. Let us now proceed to the roundtable discussion. We will discuss 3 priority sectors of ASEAN and Korea, which are digital trade, climate change, and global supply chain. It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists. We have Dr. Min Hyuk-ki from the Trade Policy Division of the Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade, Dr. Choi Won-seok from the Economic Security Team of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. And we have joining us virtually Mr. Ki An-yuen from the Sustainable Development Directorate of the ASEAN Secretariat, and Dr. Lu Rong Chen from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Lastly, Dr. Chung Chul, the Senior Research Fellow of the Trade and Investment Policy Team at the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, will lead the roundtable discussion as our moderator. Let us give them a warm round of applause.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. She relieved my duty by introducing all the panelists. So welcome to this panel discussion session. And we have 4 panelists, 2 here, but 2 from the online. And I think this is a great opportunity for the Korea and ASEAN, cooperation in the areas of the digital economy, climate change, and supply chains, which are very, very hot topics globally, and also very important issues that both Korea and ASEAN economies face these days. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Dr. Min Hyuk-ki, who is presenting the digital cooperation between the Korea and ASEAN.
예, 안녕하세요.
Nice to meet you. My name is Min Hyuk-ki. I'm from Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade. By listening to the keynote speakers and also the gentlemen who delivered their welcome remarks, that we were able to know that the cooperation between Korea and ASEAN is so important. So in terms of cooperation, the digital cooperation is going on. So I'd like to touch upon that as the major subject. Digital trade has become so important. So that is spoken by many people. And also we all know that the digital cooperation is the key. However, that digital cooperation still remains in the normative discussion only. And it is only written, stipulated in the law. So when this cooperation is adopted, there are many things we have to consider. When we signed the FTA between Korea and ASEAN, many media published the strength, the advantages that we would have by signing the FTA. However, it is difficult to estimate exactly how much benefit that we will have from an FTA. So this is also the truth. It is difficult to gauge how much benefit or how much percentage that we would gain benefit from digital cooperation. So we have to continue to make the rules for cooperation and how we're going to apply them into reality. So in this process, the role of government and also the role of private sector is important. So today, these are the three main contents that I'd like to cover. So the first one is why we need digital cooperation in global cooperation, and what is the current status of digital economy by surrounding ASEAN, and then what are the cooperative plans. So these will be the three main subjects that I'd like to cover today. So I'd like to start by talking about necessity of digital cooperation. Many people argue that digital cooperation is important. So as you can see from this PowerPoint, that you can see some familiar numbers. But what is necessitated here is the realizing that the growing importance of the digital economy, which is accompanied by the expanding global digital trade. So, according to one statistics, which was released in 2019, the digital trade volume is about 800 billion US dollars to 1.5 trillion dollars, which is accounting 3.5% to 6% of global trade. This is an old number. However, I think the actual size is bigger than this. Digital sector is embedded in other sectors, so it's really difficult to gauge or evaluate the impact of digital economy. And why digital economy or why digital cooperation is important is that the countries are moving really fast. So the first movers get the advantage. And especially in terms of digital cooperation, fast movers get the most advantage. So Korea and ASEAN have to sign a deal fast enough. And the third reason is because the growing pace of digital market in ASEAN and also Korea is so fast. So according to one statistics, annually about 20 to 30 or maximum 40% growth are expected. So you see this fast growing digital market. Against the spectrum, I cannot emphasize more about the importance of digital cooperation. So these are the general status of digital economy. So the first part you see that for digital economy, of course, you need to have access to internet. So the population who have access to internet is increasing. So about 80% of the people in ASEAN use internet. And many of them are doing their financial transactions, make financial transactions or business transactions. So in here, the role of firms and businesses are important. However, because of the importance of digital market, that they realize that the use of digital platform is directly related to the survival of company. So they know that if they fail to use or they fail to have the access to digital platform, their business will fail. And there is a typo here. Sorry for that. This shows the e-commerce market. So it's about the size is 100 billion US dollars, not 1 billion US dollars. Sorry for the typo. So after going through pandemic, actually the digital economy has expanded widely. And so by 2030, the digital economy is expected to reach about 1 trillion US dollars, according to one statistics. And with the rising digital economy, ASEAN countries are releasing related policies. In 2018, Digital ASEAN was released, And in 2019, the Digital Integration Framework Action Plan was released. In 2021, ASEAN Digital Master Plan was introduced. This encapsulated the plans for ASEAN to be leaders in the region in the area of digital cooperation. So 10 countries in ASEAN, majority of them have policies related to digital economy that I can see that they are constantly upgrading their policies, and these among many I have introduced here on my slide the example of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and you see the related policies. And the next one I'd like to talk about is the implementation plans. What are the main subjects or main topics of the implementation plans? So for facilitation of digital trade and innovation support and data protection have become important areas. And related to digital trade, the free access or seamless digital payments have become important. So my presentation is backing the fact that everybody knows and the countries have realized the importance of digital economy. And we have confirmed through many statistics. Then in what area Korea and ASEAN should cooperate? The first area I'd like to emphasize is that the digital trade agreement. We have to sign a digital trade agreement. As I mentioned before, signing a digital trade agreement doesn't mean necessarily giving you the instant result. However, after signing Korea-ASEAN FTA, we have seen that the trade volume increased. So I believe that the digital trade agreement is critical in expanding our cooperation in more areas. And as we know, we have trade in goods and services. Therefore, rather than separating digital trade agreement, I think digital trade should be included in our current agreement. By doing so, that we can have smooth implementation. And as you know, ASEAN members have different situations, and also that they have gaps in economic situation. Also, in terms of digital capability and potential and implementation, there are differences in adoption rate. So we have to consider what would be the average point in signing digital trade agreement. And there are good reference agreements. In RCEP, e-commerce part is included, so that's one good reference. And in 2019, ASEAN agreement on electronic commerce was made, so that can be a good reference point for us to sign a digital trade agreement between Korea and ASEAN. And the recent one is the Korea-Singapore DPA, which was agreed in 2021. So that will be a good base point for us to take as a reference in shaping the digital trade agreement. Then what are the detailed cooperative projects that we can roll out together? These are the only examples. The first example is cooperation in the field of e-commerce. Why is that? It's because not only Korea, but ASEAN countries are accelerating in e-commerce, which have become a good starting point. So e-commerce can be a good starting point. Based on that, we can draw some positive results, and based on that, we can expand further cooperation. So based on e-commerce, we can also enhance our customs clearance system. And the second area is digital infrastructure building. If e-commerce is accelerated, digital infrastructure is necessary in building e-commerce. So e-commerce, if we say the e-commerce is active, it means that the digital infrastructure is well laid. However, like I told you, that there are differences in terms of digital infrastructure in ASEAN member countries. So in some countries, their quality, infrastructure quality should enhance. And the third one is related to human resources. We are seeing digital transformation. However, the human resources are not catching up the transition. So the two countries, two regions, they can cooperate on enhancing human resources capabilities. There are many unicorn businesses in ASEAN which are related to digital transformation. It means that the ASEAN has captured good talents. So Korea can work with ASEAN. Like I told you, the digital transformation is accelerating. However, the human capability is not catching up. Lastly, I'd like to mention this. Last point is about standardization. Rules and systems should be made for cooperation. And then another important thing is data standardization. If data is not standardized, although we have agreed on certain system or on certain regulations, we will face difficulties in implementing our rules. So we need to agree on the data standardization. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation on the digital cooperation between Korea and ASEAN. Last week, I communicated with the panelists about the our time limit and so on. But I forgot to remind them about the time for their presentation. So please get to the point and keep your time within 10 minutes so that we can have potentially some questions from the floor. Next is the Dr. Choi on the digital gap and facilitation between the Korea and ASEAN.
네, 정철 박사님 소개
Thank you so much for your introduction, and Dr. Min shared these views about the digital trade-related cooperation between Korea and ASEAN, and digital-related rules are important, and we need to have a very comprehensive, he has talked about very comprehensive discussion about this topic, so thank you very much. And what I want to talk about today is how we can actually utilize these rules to narrow the digital gap between the two and facilitate digital trade. In order to vitalize the digital trade, we need a platform, and that should be RCEP. So I want to talk about RCEP, and I believe that such a discussion can give great and solid foundation to build up our digital trade between Korea and ASEAN. So I believe that we need to facilitate the data flow between Korea and ASEAN, first of all. So there are some needs for the localization of the trade, and there are some provisions related to blocking such actions. So we need to consider this to facilitate the data flow. And the protection of IP is also important. So in order to promote innovation, IP should be protected, and like the Patent Act and the Trademark Act should be included in the RCEP or other agreements between the two. And the online competition mechanism should be confirmed, and I believe that will also help to facilitate e-commerce. And the promotion of the digital technology is also important. So in this provision, digital technology education and training programs can be included in one provision. And just like Dr. Min said, between Korea and ASEAN, technical exchanges will be really important. We can include the provisions to guarantee the short visit or short stay of the experts, for example. And also, cybersecurity and data protection must be strengthened, which are needed by the global community. So we need to have bilateral discussion to also promote this. Just like I wrote on my slide, through RCEP, we have written these provisions. So I believe that in order to protect the IP and promote the borderless trade, digital trade, I believe that our agreement on these, based on the provisions, will be very helpful. And also, the development of e-commerce should be discussed on the platform. So we are also providing a channel to talk about this topic. So many different digital related provisions like CPTPP or RCEP or DEPA or DA are covering this, but for some of the agreements like AI or emerging technologies are not included. So for the RCEP, in order to narrow down the digital gap between the ASEAN and Korea, I believe that we can insert this provision. And from Korea's perspective, well, we are now leading the digital trade together with Singapore. So I believe the sharing of Korea's experiences will help to promote the digital trade between ASEAN and Korea. Keynote speakers also mentioned this. So digital economy and sustainable development are well mentioned by ASEAN. And from that perspective, I believe that we need to include these in our discussion, as you can see here. In 2021, United Nations released a report, and it says that in general, countries achieving higher implementation rates for digital trade facilitation have also performed eminently in sustainable trade facility. If you see the x-axis, you can see the sustainable trade facilitation, and on the y-axis, you can see digital trade facilitation. Singapore and Korea are one of the top countries, and all countries have like different levels when it comes to digital trade and sustainable trade facilitation. So to promote these digital trade and sustainable trade facilitation, I believe that they can be complementary to each other. So I believe that digital trade can contribute to sustainable development, and I want to propose some measures that we can take. So just like Dr. Min said, how digital can be utilized by the citizens. should be measured. So this is really important. What I mean is to promote digital literacy. This is also important to achieve the SDG. And secondly, we need to support digital entrepreneurship. So digital entrepreneurship can create new jobs and opportunities, especially for the young people. So by supporting digital entrepreneurs, we can contribute to economic growth and development, which are the keys to achieve SDG. And thirdly, we can use digital technologies for social good. We can use social media platform or data analytics or mobile apps in order to address social challenges such as poverty, hunger, and health. And fourthly, we can promote sustainable consumption. The digital economy has the potential to reduce waste and promote sustainable consumption through e-commerce, digital payment, and sharing economic platforms. For example, ICT that are not used by companies anymore can match with other users by using this platform. Lastly, we can advocate for policies that support the digital economy. So you heard that there were some master plans to support the digital economy by year 2025, and this will be greatly helpful to achieve the SDG. Thank you very much.
It was very interesting to see that the very positive correlation between digital trade facilitation and the sustainable trade facilitation, and also the one of the the goals to achieve is that the digital literacy issue is actually the common to many countries, especially for Korea as well. The digital literacy is is highest in the world among the younger generation, but for older generation, the digital literacy rate is the lowest in the world as well. So the digital gap is and the digital divide between generations actually is a big issue. So I think that's a potentially good issue that Korea and ASEAN countries can tackle together. Okay, so and next is the Mr. Kian Yuan on the climate change cooperation. I cannot see him. Is it online? Mr. Kian Yuan? Okay, I can see now. You ready?
Yep.
Yeah, please keep your time in 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chun Chung. And first of all, we would like to express our sincere thank you for the organizers, Excellency Ambassador Kim Hae-jung, Secretary General of the ASEAN-Korea Center, and the support from the ASEAN Committee in Seoul, especially Ambassador Gandhi Suliantonto Suherman and Ambassador Song Khan for the participation and support the event. Thank you very much for the presidents of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, Dr. Kim Hong-chung, and all other distinguished speakers joining this roundtable today. I also wish to express my gratitude for joining this roundtable, and this is very much important for us to share what ASEAN have been doing in the effort toward combating climate change in relation to sustainable development and highlight potential future collaboration between ASEAN and the Republic of Korea under the auspice of the frameworks of the Korea Indo-Pacific Strategy, Korea-ASEAN Solidarity Initiative, and the ASEAN Outlook for Indo-Pacific. ASEAN have made significant contributions and commitments towards sustainable development goals, including climate sustainability, through regional programs with support from partners, including the Republic of Korea, to address global. This includes strategic initiatives, including cross-sectoral collaboration, technological transfer, climate finance, climate mitigation and adaptation. To effectively implement this initiative, it is only natural for ASEAN and partners to strengthen cooperation. And my presentation will share ASEAN priority and initiative on climate change, including possible opportunity for future ASEAN-Korea cooperation in the context of climate and sustainability nexus. So let me come with walk through some of the slides we prepared for this roundtable. So this is the outline of the presentation. So I will start with the state of climate change and then talking about the ASEAN cooperation on the environment, including climate change, and probably some key messages I'd like to seek cooperation from Korea and the partner in this roundtable. So this is a highlight of the environmental pressures and climate change state in the ASEAN region. So we are facing pressure from the rapid urbanizations, because this is accelerating now. And also we get very high economic development in recent decades. And as mentioned by the Deputy Secretary General for Economic in ASEAN, although we have facing a lot of hurdles during COVID time, the GDP growth is about 5% recently. Next one is a highlight of the ASEAN emission from fuel combustions and the land use and land use charge in ASEAN. This is presenting the ASEAN vulnerability to climate change, and you see that 4 ASEAN member states are among top 10 globally affected by extreme climate events during 1999-2018. And ASEAN high vulnerability to climate impact is due to the poverty level and the reasons, highly dependence on the natural resources, as well as the long coastal lines and concentration of coastal cities in the ASEAN region, as well as a high rate of environmental deterioration and natural disasters. So this is just to show the times and frequencies of the disaster in the ASEAN region in the last 10 years. You see that a lot of disaster happening in the region. So let me walk you through the cooperation in environment. So this is the aims of the ASEAN from the Bangkok Declaration in 1967. Then this is the structure of how the guidelines of the ASEAN cooperation with the structure of the overall strategy, as well as the priorities focusing on economic, social, cultures, as well as the securities and political cooperation and narrowing the development gap. So with regard to the environment cooperation, this is one of the earliest cooperation in ASEAN. If you look at ASEAN establishment in 1967, 10 years after that, in 1977, starting the cooperation on environmental among member states. And the environment is cooperation in ASEAN. It's guided by the Social Culture Blueprint 2025. We envision ASEAN community that engaging, benefiting the people, and also is inclusive, sustainable, resilient, and climate. So this is the priorities, 7 priorities in the environment. So is including nature's conservation and biodiversity, coastal and marine, water resource, environmental sustainable city, climate change here, chemicals waste, and the environmental education and sustainable consumption. So these 7 priorities of the ASEAN cooperation on environment will structure in the 7 working group that you see here in ASEAN structure. Let me move on the cooperation of climate change. So under the working group on climate change, is, the focus of the climate change cooperation is very much, you look at that 8 themes. One is adaptation, second is long-term planning and assessment of the NDC, mitigation, modeling and assessment, the MRV and stocktake of the greenhouse emission, financings, cross-sector cooperations, and also technology transfer. So that is the 8 priorities under the working group on climate change. This slide captures what is the recent initiative that ASEAN is working on. So if we look from the left to right, you see that we cover quite a broad range of cooperation from the company levels or MIB towards the studies of long-term strategy and also the analysis on climate change report, and working with the dialogue partners, for example, United Kingdom, as well as ASEAN statements and commitment at the UNFCCC. So this is what we are working now this year, last year and this year. So we said on MRV at the company levels, and also we're talking about the climate financing strategy and establishment of ASEAN-Center for Climate Change, as well as the continuing working with other partners, for example, Germany on climate action program and also ASEAN commitment at UNFCCC. So going forward, we have listed out quite a number of cross-sectoral initiatives on climate change, as I see here. Some talking about the integrating climate change and the landslide risk assessment, climate change and energy, as well as the impact of climate change and drought, and gender equality, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. So this is highlight some of the research and publication we have with regard to the climate change in ASEAN region across different sectors. So this is a quick one on the ASEAN State of Climate Change report. Basically, is one of the key documents that provide an overall outlook for us to work and collaborate on climate change. And the aim to present the ASEAN vision 2050 toward achieving the net zero emission. This also present recommendation and making the transition toward 2030s and also a longer term to 2050 for both adaptation and mitigation, considering the ASEAN development context and in alignment with the Paris Agreement. So this snapshot is talking about the adaptation strategy in the other one talking about mitigation strategy. Now I would like to spend a little time on the development of ASEAN strategy on carbon neutrality. So this is one of the key documents we are looking at finalizing this year. This will help to guide ASEAN regional strategy, coordinate effort across ASEAN member states and advance regional interests toward the based on the study on ASEAN carbon neutrality. That cover quite a number of key initiatives that we are working on. One is a baseline report and gap analysis. Second is a 5-pillar strategy. So we're looking at the inventory of the greenhouse gas emission, nature-based solution, market-based solution, and so on and so forth. And we're also talking about the implementation strategy, that including how we effectively implement and financing such strategy. Then we also develop the monitoring and evaluation mechanism and the governance structures of how ASEAN can work together, member state and partner to implement such strategy. So this is some of the center regarding working between ASEAN with regard to the SDG implementation. And we just highlight here the important roles of ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue based in Thailand, the ASEAN Circular Economy Platform, and ASEAN Resource Panels working with the UNSCAP. So key message we would like to work here, this is very much like we are working on climate change within ASEAN, but also we need to align with the SDG 13 climate actions. And also we can explore other area of cooperation under the ASEAN Outlook for Indo-Pacific, as well as the Korea Indo-Pacific strategy, so that we can promote the advancement of regional climate initiative through cooperation with partners, including the Republic of Korea, and so effective cooperation among member states with the achievement of ASEAN Vision 2025 and other global commitments of the Paris Agreement. So this is the structure of working with dialogue partners. We see that we have high-level dialogue on climate change and environment with the EU, with the Republic of Korea, the US, Japan, and ASEAN Plus 3, as well as of the East ASEAN Summit, all talking about the environment and climate change. With specifically with Korea, we have the first ASEAN-Korea dialogue in 2021, and then we had the second one last year, and this year in October, we've been going to have the third ASEAN-Korea dialogue, and that very much focusing on the progress and the future collaboration with the Republic of Korea on climate change and the environment. So I think this is a very good platform for us to discuss potentially cooperation project within ASEAN and the Republic of Korea. So this is how we see the cooperation between ASEAN and Korea with this specific matter with regard to the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Next one. Yes, we have a key message here, very much like we are committed toward the realization of sustainable climate stipulated by the ASEAN principles and the community blueprint 2025. We are very much engaging and promoting the ASEAN-led mechanism to promote and strengthen relevant areas of cooperation on climate and the disaster risk reduction as suggested and highlighted in the AOIP, and we look forward to a concrete cooperation with the Republic of Korea on climate change issues in alignment with the blueprints, ASEAN Action Plan, AOIP, Korea Indo-Pacific Strategy, and so on and so forth. And we very much looking forward to the comments and suggestions of how we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kian Yuan. Obviously, the climate change is a global common issue, and I think it is closely linked to the sustainability and also establishing the green supply chain or sustainable supply chain. So I think it should be a priority to deal with some changes in the policies, like the EU's European Union's CBAM, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is not far in the future, right? It's almost now, and probably one of the hardest challenges the entrepreneurs face these days. So speaking of which, we will talk about the global supply chains, and I'd like to introduce the Dr. Luong Chen from AREA, who is going to talk about this supply chain issues and some other cooperation between Korea and ASEAN.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Chu. Good afternoon, everyone. And for our online participants, good morning and good evening. It's my great pleasure to join this year's ASEAN-Korea Roundtable on Trade and Investment. First of all, I would like to join my colleagues here to restate the significance of ASEAN-Korea cooperation in promoting regional integration in East and Southeast Asia. Economically, we know that both ASEAN and Korea are important participants of global value chains, and strengthening ASEAN-Korea economic ties and improving Asia's overall global competitiveness are actually mutually reinforcing each other. And in the digital age, we see this mutual reinforcement will keep doing promote the regional development. Looking forward, I will observe the improvement of ASEAN-Korea trade and investment in at least 4 dimensions. So the first one is about the bilateral economic complementarity. To this point, ASEAN and Korea has very solid foundation for further cooperation already. For instance, the conclusion and the implement, sorry, I can see my voice echo here. So the conclusion and implementation of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, could unleash the potential of trade, investment, and economic cooperation. This is undoubted. The second one is about changing global geopolitical and geoeconomic orders. Given the highly integrated regional and global economy, both ASEAN and Korea need to quickly respond to the new international situation. And also, it is important to let business and also other countries and regions to understand that our position and strategy in a good time manner. It is good to see this, and here we see that the U.S. Initiate Indo-Pacific Partnership could be one of the game changers in the next 5 to 10 years. And it is very good to see that this has been included in this year's main theme of Roundtable. The third one I would like to mention is about the development of the digital economy, especially digital trade. This is actually a focus here. We know that digital is the new genes of the 21st century global value chains. In particular, economic servicification and the deepening and expansion of global value chains are among the very promising consequence of economic digitalization. There are plenty areas that ASEAN, Korea, trade and investment can do to facilitate digital trade, and also both sides can work together to harness the potential of the digital economy. Actually, to this point, both our keynote speakers and also our fellow panelists already provide a very comprehensive insights on this topic. But here, just allow me to complement with a suggestion of 3 layers of further cooperation between ASEAN and Korea. First is the liberalization of trade services. Second one is the improvement of connectivity. And the third one, as Oblen already mentioned, is to provide good practices in global rural setting to facilitate digital trade. Let me briefly explain these 3 layers. So first, ASEAN and Korea should and could work together to fuel the market engine, to foster the growth of trade in services. In the digital age, there's a 2-side stories here. On the one side is that digitalization smears out boundaries between different links of the value chains and increase the information transparency to all GVC participants. In addition to international fragmentation of production, firms can benefit from the lower cost of people-to-people connection and further fragmented tasks that's shared internationally. On the other side, the application of digital technologies and the related business models into service sector can make services much more innovative and productive. Digital empowering service links, either those are digital enabled or digital born, can improve the capacity of GVC coordination and therefore motivate the network extension. So to both ASEAN and Korea, they can benefit from further trade liberalizations in services. Second, when thinking about bilateral investment and cooperation, improving connectivity is a core issue of ASEAN development, as many of our colleagues already mentioned, especially in digital connectivity. Many ASEAN countries are still facing obstacles coming from capacity and resource limits. This could be either in capital or technology or both. So in this regard, I think Korea can consider providing financial assistance to ASEAN partners in support of their infrastructure and capacity building. And of course, this is with the participant and involvement of Korean companies. On the one side, this could actually help resolve some of the bottleneck problems existing in developing ASEAN countries. And on the other side, this can actually enhance the image of Korean companies in the region and facilitate their doing business in the region. The third one is the ASEAN-Korea partnership can contribute to build a rule-based playing field for digital trade. I will skip this because this has been full discussion. And if you have questions, we can talk about it later. So let me move to my last point here is that in related to the substantial development. So this is something has been widely discussed, how digital technology could help us find solutions in dealing with challenges such as global warming or climate change. So to this point, I have thinking of from two sides. On one hand, I think we can keep thinking how digitalization can lead to more innovation and creation to help us unleash the potential of new technology to such as the new materials, new energies, and new technology to those kind of we call it sunrise sectors for investment. And on the other hand, I would like to highlight that we should not neglect the importance of embracing digital technology into the traditional industry to remedy their limits of development. And one example is in the electric power generating industry. And I will explain more if we have time later. Well, since we are limited of time, let me sum up here. So basically, I would like to join my fellow partners to highlight the importance of strategic thinking of ASEAN-Korea trade and investment in the context of digitalization, changing geopolitics, and also the global GVC restructuring. It is both ASEAN and Korea's best interest to promote an open and rule-based global economic order. This should stay at the core of ASEAN-Korea trade and investment. So with this, I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Long Chen, for providing us the comprehensive overview on the cooperation between ASEAN and Korea, and also bring to the table some of those specific suggestions. I thought that I could have some time left for some floor questions, but I realized that there is a Q&A session right after this panel discussion session. So I'm gonna leave all the hard work to Mr. Joshua Nguyen Gui Tekwa on those questions. But since we have a couple of minutes, actually, I have one question, because we talk about the Korea and ASEAN cooperation, but in the case of the digital trade agreement, Dr. Min, is there any trade agreement among the ASEAN members? So I think it's also important how to coordinate well those between Korea and ASEAN and also among ASEAN, so that there could be no overlapping, or there could be further synergy. So I think in that context, my question is.
예.
아세안 국가들이 현재 디지털 무역 협정이라고 체결한 것은 이제 실질적으로 디지털 무역 협정을 체결하는 싱가포르가 체결한 협정들이 있습니다.
Singapore and Singapore, Chile, and New Zealand signed a deal, and also Singapore signed a digital deal with Korea. As I mentioned before, that the ASEAN countries have signed e-commerce related agreement. in RCEP, there is a chapter dedicated to digital, because there is a chapter that is dedicated to e-commerce, and that's why digital agreement is somehow dealt in the chapter. So I believe there is a ground growing for agreement, digital trade agreement. But what we have to remember is the gap. For example, Singapore is known for advanced policies, so that they can sign a digital trade deal with many advanced countries. However, some countries in ASEAN don't have infrastructure, or they are not necessarily, they are not relatively ready for signing a deal.
Biggest task is to finish the session on time, I believe. And I'd like to ask you to give a big applause to all the panelists who provided the very insightful discussion and presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tong, and the panelists for your insightful and informative discussion. We will now move on to the Q&A session. I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Kwak Sung-il, to the stage, along with Mr. Joshua Ngui, head of the Trade and Investment Unit of the ASEAN-Korea Center, who will be our moderator. Mr. Joshua, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the Master of Ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for continuing to tuning in to the Q&A session of the ASEAN-Korea Trade and Investment Roundtable 2023, specifically deliberating on both the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific as well as the ROK Indo-Pacific strategy. Just before we go into the Q&A session, just allow me to summarize the keynote session as well as the panel discussion just now. So His Excellency Satvinder Singh detailed out ASEAN unwavering commitment to regional economic integration and upholds the principle of an open, transparent, and rule-based trading system. And Dr. Kwek have shared on the possible cooperation direction between ASEAN and Korea, as well as the possible establishment of Innovation Center in ASEAN region and the launch of a bilateral senior level official consultative body. And Dr. Min have raised a possible digital cooperation plan between ASEAN and Korea, namely the digital trade agreement, the e-commerce cooperation, building digital infrastructure, creating a talent pool of digital workers, as well as cooperation on data standardization. And Dr. Che have shared with us on how to bridge digital gap through RCEP and the facilitation of digital trade through trade rules, as well as how the utilization of digital economy can assist in achieving SDG. And Mr. Kian Nguyen from ASEAN Secretariat highlighted ASEAN vulnerability to climate change initiative and as well as the initiative of the AWGCC, ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, as well as the ASEAN ROK Dialogue on Environment and Climate Change. And Dr. Lurong Chen just now highlighted that ASEAN-Korea is complementary to each other, but we need to take note on the changing geopolitical situation, as well as we need to embrace digital trade, and as well as to take note of the importance of sustainable development. And now, as we proceed to the question and answer session, we would like to just urge all the physical audience here in the audience, as well as the online viewer, you can actually raise your question through the YouTube chat. As there's a limited time in the Q&A session, additional questions will be compiled and sent out to the panelists. Okay, so it seems that we have the first question with us. Can you elaborate more on the ongoing efforts of ASEAN in relation to climate change, as well as measures implemented in relation to sustainable development in achieving UN SDGs. In your opinion, what will be the sectors and areas that ASEAN would like to seek cooperation and require assistance from Korea or other dialogue partners? I believe this question, it would be best for Mr. Kien Nguyen to answer. And Mr. Kien, I hope that, you are online. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank the Tikwa for the summary and also for the question raised to the ASEAN Secretariat with regard to the alignments of partnership between ASEAN and the UN with regard to climate action, and also what the possible activities that ASEAN can seek the support from Korea. So let me start with the first part of the question. Yes, ASEAN have been working very closely with the UN agencies, be it with the platform, the UN FCCC, where we have expressed ASEAN commitments on climate action, both with regard to the national actions and the cooperation through NDC implementation, but at the same time, what the regional initiative to keep track and also support the ASEAN member state, especially with regard to capacity buildings and monitoring of the NDC implementation. In addition, we are also working with member states, some member states, to take lead in terms of working toward the CAP, and where we have the carbon neutralization strategy is something that ASEAN is working with the support from the UN, including the financing strategy for climate action. So with regard to the UN agency, you have been working very much with them, both on technologies, best practices, information sharing, as well as capacity building through different UN agencies with ASEAN and ASEAN member states. Now, with the issues that asking what ASEAN can work with Korea in terms of climate action, structure is a couple of points. The first one is, if you're looking at climate change is a global issue, we really need a global collaboration and global partnership in this implementation. It's not like, it's ASEAN, UN, or member state at the UN platform, but we are also looking at the regional level, where we can zoom in deeper of what's the regional context, development requirement for specific action that we think that is relevant to the region itself. And I think for this one, we really much working with different partners and also with the key stakeholders within member states and also within ASEAN region to look into what could be the most effective way to implement and to propose and chart out the planning for climate action. For here, we would like to propose that we need, we just say that cross-sectoral approach and also the whole of the society approach, and which the technologies, advancement of technologies and technological applications is more important. So we're talking about digital trade, we're talking about digitalization, digital transformation here. So I think that the technology is as more important, not only to transform the economy, but it's also to give us a way to keep track of where we are in terms of progress and what is the most important area that we can look into. The second one is very much is early warnings, or we saying that is monitoring and analysis. And for this one, is a forefront in this, and with governance structure we learn from Korea in many areas, especially in disasters, risk reductions, and climate adaptation. We can learn from Korea and the center in Korea of the Green Climate Funds in Korea. We can see how Korea can support us working within the region and the ZCF in Korea, in Incheon, Korea. I think that the behavior change is very important. If you don't have the behavior change, then the pattern of consumption, the pattern of production will be remain, and therefore I think the nature, the environment will be under pressure if we continue as business as usual. So I think that behavior change is very important, and education, evidence-based reporting will be very important. So let me end here and take more questions if relate to ASEAN and how ASEAN can work with Korea and also other interested partners in the climate action in solution. Thank you very much, Mr. Tikwan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kian, for raising that the importance of technology, monitoring analysis, as well as behavioral change. And then let's see, do we have a next question? Okay. Yeah, this question is regards to Timor-Leste. On the occasion where Timor-Leste was granted an observer status and allows its participation in all ASEAN meetings, thus, in your opinion, which area sectors should ROK prioritize to be implemented for economic cooperation in relation to Timor-Leste, as Timor-Leste will be an ASEAN member soon, and Timor-Leste does fall within the Indo-Pacific region. So I would like to pass this question to Dr. Quek. Maybe you can share some views on this. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. To become ASEAN's 11th member states in this September, Timor-Leste should no longer be regarded as a recipient country anymore, but as a partner for corporations. As a cooperation partner, we would better focus on supporting Timor-Leste to participating as a member of international community. Korea is the biggest beneficiary of multilateral trading system such as WTO. Timor-Leste are on the way to join WTO, so I think it will require the various capacity building related to join the WTOs. Moreover, trade and investment is very important to grow the Timor-Leste's economy. So Timor-Leste already has a trade, invest, and export promotion agency. So, but as far as I know, Korea has the KOTRA. The KOTRA is the most important agency and very good example of the trade and investment promotion agency. So we may give us some capacity building for these kind of things to Timor-Leste, and these kind of effort can improve the Timor-Leste's capacity to join the international communities. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Quek. Okay, let's see, do we have another question? Yes. Okay, I will just read out the question. ROK's Indo-Pacific strategy seeks to expand regional economic security network and maintain a resilient supply chain. How can this strategy be beneficial to ASEAN? And also, can the deepening of global value chain be beneficial to the industry sectors of both regions? So, yeah, maybe Dr. Min, you would like to take this question? The floor is yours. Mm-hmm.
일단 우리가 이제 우리나라의 인도태평양 전략에 대해서 다시 한번 생각해 볼 필요가 있는데.
It is important for us to reflect the AOIP. As Mr. Kwok mentioned, and also the keynote speaker mentioned, the AOIP was released in 2020, and the vision is freedom and prosperity, and also the mutual prosperity is an important pillar. So what is important here is that Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy is slightly different from that of Japan and the US. The US and Japan is more focusing on political side or geopolitical side. However, Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy is also not solely concentrating on political side, but it is equally concentrating on economic side. So our strategy is balanced. So the strategy that we are seeking, the things that we are seeking through the strategy can be narrowed down to two. First is securing the supply chain currently, because the supply chain is insecure. And the second goal is to enhance the responsibility of the country, considering the international stand of the country. President Yoon considers ASEAN importantly. In ASEAN, Indo-Pacific strategy, President Yoon considers ASEAN very importantly. So as a result, that he considers RCEP importantly. So which RCEP is based on the economic partnership, but the current strategy is going beyond the economic cooperation. So in rolling out the AOIP and also the related strategies, what we have to consider importantly is the China risks. In our strategy, that the strategy doesn't mention anything about avoiding or not including China, because in the strategy, what is important is inclusion. I think China is part of the strategy. However, since China and the US are conflicting, we need to have some divided views. We need to have divided views on strategic businesses and also other businesses. In strategic businesses, in case that the China fails to perform in their strategic areas due to the conflicts between the US, then what would the Korea's role? That is first question that we need to ask ourselves. And in other businesses, in other cases, China is not excluded. So we have to secure more supply chains in other businesses. And one thing I'd like to further emphasize is in our strategy in the Pacific, that we emphasize our responsibility as a country. Korea's international policy was focused on enhancing the trade volume or the trade surplus. However, in this cooperation with ASEAN, in this new framework, that we see the strategy with a wider perspective. So rather than thinking about trade focusing, that we are seeing ASEAN as a partner, expanding our influence so that we can have a long-term benefits each other. So through my discussion and through other speakers' discussions, in digital and in environment, that we are going to strengthen our cooperation, and we must strengthen our cooperation. That is the key in developing the cooperation between Korea and ASEAN. So the important thing to consider is we need to consider our position. Korea and ASEAN, we are not the strongest player in the world. We have to consider the US, the EU, and China. We are not the leading countries. We are kind of in the middle. Work closely with the strong powerhouses like the US, EU, and China. We need to take advantage by working closely with other players too.
Yes, Dr. Quay, please. 이 질문에 대해서 조금 드리고 싶은 말씀이 있어가지고요.
I also want to add comments. So last year, I conducted some research about the origin of the origin of the food, and we tried to find out how much sources we can get from ASEAN, not from China. So 70% of the sources were coming from China, and I wanted to find out how much can be replaced by ASEAN, and I saw that only 42 items could be supplied by ASEAN. So the scope of the sources that can be supplied by ASEAN are really limited. So we are close economic partners, but still we can interpret that ASEAN does not have the capacity that is necessary to supply such sources to Korea. So first of all, we need to find out ways to develop the capabilities of ASEAN. Only then we can strengthen the GVC and strengthen the supply chain between the two in a more stable way. So technical cooperation will be the most important part. If we take a long-term view, how we can lead the technical cooperation will be very important. And in order to do so, ASEAN must build and establish some policies, for example. But still, when it comes to technical cooperation or technical security, some of the ASEAN countries do not have the necessary systems yet, like policies or systems yet. So we are a little bit concerned about it. So we have to find out how we can find this. I think this will be the most important topic for strengthening GVC. This will be the most urgent topic when it comes to cooperation, like strengthening cooperation between the two. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kwek. Yes, hopefully with the implementation and entering into force of RCEP, ASEAN country will be able to export more items to ROK in the near future. Of course, with the economic cooperation that is being implemented by ASEAN-Korea Center. Okay, next, let's look, do we have a next question? Okay, this is with regards to digital trade framework. ASEAN and Korea are currently working to develop digital trade framework in the region. What will be the steps and procedures that ASEAN and Korea should take to fully implement the digital economy? How are ASEAN and Korea prepared for the flow of the digital economy? So I would like to pass this question maybe to Dr. Shea. Dr. Shea, the floor is yours.
네, 조시아 박사님 그 질문.
Thank you very much for the question. I believe that compared to the US and EU, how Korea is preparing for the digital economy, I think I can talk about three things. First is building the digital infrastructure and what kind of agreements we have to promote these. And then I will talk about the digital cooperation between the two. So after COVID-19, we have made efforts to build digital infrastructure. As Dr. Min said, there are big gaps between ASEAN member countries. When it comes to Brunei and Vietnam and Singapore, infrastructure is building in a fast manner, but not in some of the other countries. So there are some gaps when it comes to building of the infrastructure, and then there are some disagreements among the ASEAN countries. For example, if you see the digital report released in 2021, when it comes to Vietnam and Indonesia, about the data use, they have very limited position. But in Malaysia, for example, they allow the transfer of the digital outside their country. But when it comes to the Philippines and Singapore, they are more free compared to other countries. So when it comes to sending the digital overseas, there are not accurate agreements among the ASEAN countries or with Korea compared to the US and EU. But I think there are many things that we can do to develop digital trade, including e-commerce. So last year, we analyzed network, And Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Korea are very influential on the international stage for this digital agreement, because they have signed digital agreements, and they are now leading the trend in the global community. So when you see these 3 points, ASEAN and Korea already have the digital related agreement like RCEP, and with the Singapore and Korea at the center, they can maybe make a kind of pilot project for the digital transfer to outside their countries. And I believe that China's Information Policy Research Institute, they have promoted the digital single window program. So we can say that they are already working on this program, so we can benchmark this to make this a pilot program to apply to ASEAN and Korea. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shea. So, okay, let's see. Do we have a next question? Yes. In the midst of global economic uncertainty, developing and promoting regional value chain and regional value content would be significant and beneficial to both ASEAN and Korea. Could you elaborate on measures or potential cooperation that should be implemented for both regions to achieve a resilient supply chain? I believe this question can be answered by Dr. Lurong Chen. Dr. Lurong, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Joshua, and thank you for the questions. There's a lot of things to say about this question very broadly, but let me put it short and briefly. So my opinion is that in a world full of uncertainty today, we need most is trust. So today we have been talking a lot about digitalization, digital trade, and taking consumer protection as an example. We see that in the digital age, more and more business are done by buyers and sellers located in different countries. They could be governed by different laws and regulations, and they use different currency and different languages. So what we need here is that better consumer protection to ensure the interests and welfare of both sides. And what we can do here is that we can increase the transparency, for example, and also increase the accuracy of the information. And when there were dispute, we provide a mechanism for dispute resolution here. And a related issue here is the cybersecurity. As we know, data protection, privacy, and security issue against computer crime are increasingly critical, also related to the data privacy and consumer interest. And we don't want to see the prevalence of cyber crimes and the lack of protection against those cyber attacks that hinder the expansion of global value chains in the digital age. So what we need to do here is that more international cooperation to fight against cybercrime and cyber attacks, and based on that, build a more secure, reliable marketplace to facilitate business and people connections. So similar issues we can find in other areas, just like competition policy, IPR protection, or taxation, etc., etc. And what I want to emphasize here is that ASEAN-Korea cooperation in these areas can actually contribute to trust buildings between the two regions in a very substantial and effective way. And more importantly is that ASEAN-Korea's effort in this area can generate very positive influence on the whole regions and the rest of the world to create and promote an open and rule-based global economic order. So with this, I hope I answered this question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lurong Chen. Yeah, we took note that there is a need to look into the cooperation between ASEAN and Korea on data privacy, as well as the trust building initiative. So as time is of the limit at the moment, so allow me, based on today's discussion, to summarize in brief the discussion that we have on the ASEAN-Korea Trade and Investment Roundtable 2023. In this, it can be said that there is convergence between both AOIP and ROK Indo-Pacific strategy in relation to trade and investment. Both documents prioritize and upholds the principle of an open, transparent, and rule-based trading system. Both documents highlighted mutually beneficial and substantive economic cooperation in the areas of digital trade, climate change, and resilient supply chain management, among others. Both documents discuss digital transformation, the need for digital trade rules, facilitation of cross-border data flow, as well as achieving SDG through the utilization of digital economy. Both documents underscore the importance of regional cooperation on climate change in line of UN SDG 2030. Thus, ASEAN and Korea have shared a common goal, laying down strategies to build a better future for the mutual benefit and prosperity of ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you. That's all from me as the moderator of the Q&A session. Thank you, and kamsahamnida. So I'm passing this floor back to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joshua. Ladies and gentlemen, this calls for the end of the ASEAN-Korea Trade and Investment Roundtable 2023. We would like to thank all the speakers and the on and offline participants for sharing your precious time to attend our event. We hope our online viewers gained invaluable information throughout the presentations and discussion. Let me inform our online participants that you can fill out the survey provided in the YouTube description box. Your feedback on our program would be very much appreciated. Have a great evening. We hope to see you again. Thank you very much. 이것으로 2023년 한 아세안 무역투자 라운드 테이블을 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.